Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked, locked. Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. We're delighted you're with us. We broadcast from the Ozark Mountains, right from the farm. 2 hours, Monday through Friday. Nathan is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota. Thank you, Nathan. Rich Scheben's with us, offgridmontana.com. Offgridmontana.com. Welcome, Rich Scheben.
Well, thank you, Mr. Finelli. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. I just, when you call, or when Howard calls, or Kyle or Rick Miller or John Stadtmiller, one of my friends. If one of you guys calls, our son says, "Hey, your boyfriend called," and I go, "Which one?"
Oh boy. I don't know if I need to respond to that one.
So, I just think it's hysterical. And, it used to mean, I don't know, your friend who was a boy called, and, when I was growing up, that's what it meant. And so I think it's quite humorous, and I get a chuckle every time our son says it. But I just wanted to tell you that, when you call, he says, if I miss the call, or and we're all outside working on the farm, and the answering machine kicks in, he'll say, there's a message from you, your boyfriend called. But anyway, hey, you wanted to talk about something pretty interesting, a rigged election, or we'll call it a stolen election?
Yeah, and we'll move to a more serious note here, Vince. Yeah. I mentioned this on the air a few months ago, and I talked about this author and whistleblower who is a true hero, and he lives in Montana. His name is Chris Kortlander. And for those of you who are on your PC and want to follow along, if you want to go to thiswestisourwest.com. Again, thiswestisourwest.com. And basically what he points out, and he has plenty of evidence to show, I'm just going to mention a few quick excerpts because of time, but he proves that John Tester was elected via voter fraud. Now, that's a pretty, that statement alone says a lot. And I don't think anybody would say that statement unless there was quite a bit of evidence. But it looks like if you go into the details and specificity, and there's information on there in text, and then you can watch a 40-minute video. And I did that, and I'm just going to write down a few excerpts that I found in there. Now, he didn't mention this, but basically John Tester has voted. This is the only sentence that's from me, okay? And it looks like John Tester basically voted for the agenda presented by the elite, the Soroses, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, and not for the people. For you, and for those of you who think I'm mentioning this only because I live in Montana and John Tester is a U.S. Senator in Montana, that's not the case. Okay, the fact is that he's a U.S. Senator, and he affects all of us. Now, in 2006, when he won, and this book, by the way, by Chris Kortlander, is titled Arrow to the Heart. And basically, again, he talks about how John Tester won by voter fraud. I mean, there's a lot more in the book than just this. And he talks about a lot of the deception that was done on Indian reservations, especially in his county, in the Crow Indian Reservation. Now, some of the things that he mentioned was that ballot boxes were manipulated by Indian reservations. Plus, he paid, I want you to listen to this, America, he paid $40 to each individual for his vote on the Indian reservations. Let me repeat that, because it's illegal. John Tester paid $40 for each vote on the Indian reservation to all the people on the rolls on the reservation so he can get the vote. Now, what this did in 2006 is it shifted the power in the U.S. Senate from Republican to Democrat. And it had consequences that has set us back as a nation, not just Montana, for probably a decade. And apparently, John Kortlander has done his homework. He has either pictures or canceled checks to show that Tester actually paid $40 to each person who is on the rolls on the Indian reservation. Now, this is just mostly relating to the Crow Indian Reservation on his, but he makes it known that this happens on every reservation. Montana has several of them. Now, Tester barely won the vote by 0.87%. So the Indian vote basically tipped the scales. Open ballot boxes were examples of some of the fraud. They weren't allowing poll watchers to stay with the ballot boxes. Indian police, here's a good one, Indian police taking hours at 2 a.m. in the morning to transfer the ballots, which should have taken a 20-minute drive to the clerk and recorder's office. And here is the real sad thing, and we all know this, but it's worth repeating. Kortlander, who's a whistleblower, in other words, he's a hero, he contacted the FBI many times, and they kept saying they were going to show up, and they never did. Now, we know everything that's going on with the corruption and the manipulation and the deception and how so many people in the FBI are bought and paid for. We've had similar instances in many articles with the NSA, the CIA, the DOJ. It really looks, unfortunately, like America, especially at its top levels, is bought and paid for. And this is why we need heroes. This is why we need whistleblowers. This is why we need people to come forward and to stick up for the little people. Because if you listen to this show on a regular basis, we all know that the little people don't have representation. They do not have restitution under the law or protection under the law. Unless you're part of a certain group, so the elite can pin different groups against one another. In other words, we're allowing the elite to poison us against ourselves. So I want to thank Chris Kortlander as a hero, as a whistleblower, to bring this information forth. And despite all the efforts, despite all the government contacts that he has made, from local resources all the way to the FBI, and nothing has happened. And that's one of the reasons I'm mentioning this on the air. I mentioned this about a month or two ago, and I think it's definitely worth repeating, especially with election season coming up. But we need people who is going to stick up for the little guy. It's just like I mentioned on the air a few times how the Montana Department of Revenue reassessed my house without my knowledge, said I had a finished basement, 2 finished bathrooms, and a bunch of, and way more on the list, saying I don't live off-grid anymore when I do, which changed the valuation of my home. And so far, nothing's been done about it. Even though they said before the end of May payment, I was going to be reassessed, I've yet to see the results of that, even though I had a conversation with Don Cordon, one of the supervisors, who said they were going to send somebody here in the next week or two. So I'm waiting for that, because government, whether it be small government or big government, folks, they have no accountability. They don't need to have any restitution. They don't need to have, towards the people. They don't need to have transparency. And it's up to us to create ideas and solutions. And that's why I talk about QE for the people. Because we got to ask ourselves, are government workers even worth their pension? Should the people pay their pension under these circumstances? The U.S. Congress, we all know that they, in one vote, pretty much said, okay, we're going to get a pension after one term. Well, 78% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck and paying the bill. Well, Vince, I could rant more, but I think for that topic, it might be a dead horse for the hour.
I've got a comment. I've got a comment based on what you've said. Mm-hmm. You know, I received these tax notices for our farm, and they want to know how many animals, they want to know how many trucks, how many cars, machinery, all kinds of things. And then at the bottom it says, I do solemnly swear that, I haven't removed any of this, any items out of the, I'm paraphrasing, anything out of the county to avoid taxes, and that this is accurate. I cross that out, and I write, this is an estimate, right on the face in ink of this tax form. And the reason I do that is because I don't know if it's accurate. I honestly don't know. I mean, I could have had another calf being born that night. Okay, I don't know. Am I supposed to go out there and count, find animals spread over 241 acres? Is that what they want me to do? Well, I'm not going to do it. So I write, this is an estimate, and I also cross off the part that says, I do solemnly swear, because I'm not going to swear to it. I'm not going to let these guys prosecute me for something I can't figure out. I'm not going to do it. So I'm not telling our class to do it. I'm just saying that's what I do. Rich Sheben, I'll be right back. Rich Sheben's with us, offgridmontana.com. Rich, you're talking about whistleblowers. There's an article that I was reading about. It says about 1/3 of Americans believe that Edward Snowden did the right thing when he revealed the vast domestic surveillance apparatus that the NSA had installed to monitor us. Just 1/3 of Americans feel that Edward Snowden did the right thing. And so what happens is whistleblowers just don't face prosecution. They can lose their jobs. They're often pushed to unemployability, bankruptcy, depression. So just keep in mind that the system, the state, is trying to destroy whistleblowers. That's a sad commentary, but I believe that's absolutely true. What do you think? What do you think happens to a cop that's a whistleblower and says, you know what? 99% of the cops in this precinct are corrupt. They're taking bribes. They're going to restaurants. They're getting free meals because the owners of the restaurants are terrified that if they don't give them free meals, they are going to be, they're going to be blackballed. They aren't going to get police protection if they ever need it. So, the cops are, quietly shaking down the store owners. The cops get free stuff that the rest of us don't get because they're cops. And they have guns, badges, cars, tasers, handcuffs, shotguns, AR-15s, machine guns, pepper spray, tear gas, flashbang grenades, drones. So, the plague has all these tools, so people are afraid of them. So even the cops are afraid of the cops. So who is going to blow the whistle on a cop if he's a cop? That's a problem. Now, I support whistleblowing. I support if someone's doing something wrong in the government, absolutely blow the whistle. If you're a scientist and you know for sure that Monsanto has been creating chemicals that are destroying the planet and killing people and giving them cancer, which we all believe, I believe everyone that listens to usaprepares.com, all of our students believe that's true. But there's a price that whistleblowers pay, a huge, huge price. And but I think it's the right thing to do. But unfortunately, if you're a cop, you're pressured into not being a whistleblower. Rich, what do you think?
Well, I think it's, I have mixed feelings as far as the cop thing. I definitely agree that some cops step over the line. I believe some cops are good cops. I mean, I look at William Binney and Kevin Shipp from the CIA and I believe NSA. And anyway,
former CIA, right?
Right. Well, when I was working with GlaxoSmithKline, I remember saying at a meeting we should create a nutritional care program for the American people. And it was almost, and you could hear a mouse fart in the room, because the management was very obvious that, and I found out later in life, and that's why they hire people in their 20s and 30s because they don't know as much, and they're trainable. And, I thought that it was actually an ethical company and industry trying to cure and prevent diseases, while all they do is manage symptoms for profit. And who knows what else they do behind closed doors and laboratories and in vitro test tubes and things of that nature. So, but I certainly, I've read quite a few people making a big difference in science and corporate America and big government. And I think Edward Snowden is a hero, just like Kevin Shipp and William Binney and countless others who have, taken the risk. When I was diagnosed with spinal stenosis and nerve damage, and I asked for a part-time job share, and GlaxoSmithKline told me through HR that part-time job shares were for women only, and I contacted 30 different attorneys. Not one wanted to take the case because of political correctness or their fear of the big corporate oligarchy that they know is basically protected by big government. So I think whistleblowers are making a dent. I think they are heroes, and I think they are making a difference that's going to benefit the little people. So keep on doing it, folks. Vince?
Yeah, we'll be right back. So the White House Correspondents Association is an organization of journalists who cover the White House and the President of the United States. This is according to Wikipedia. The White House Correspondents Association was founded in 1914 by journalists in response to an unfounded rumor that the United States Congressional Committee would select which journalists could attend press conferences of the president. So it operates independently of the White House, and they have an annual dinner called the White House Correspondents' Dinner, which is traditionally attended by the president, and it's covered, of course, by the media. Now, who are the 2017, 2018 leadership members? Well, without giving you their names, because it'll just take too long, the officers are from Bloomberg News, Yahoo News, Fox News, and Associated Press. The board members are from the Associated Press, NBC News, ABC News, New York Times, and Dallas Morning News. Now, from the beginning, we're talking 1914, the there's an association list of presidents of the organization. And let me just list a few of these. Washington Star, Associated Press, The Sun, the International News Service. Now, this is the early days, like we're talking about the 1920s now. The Washington Post, Universal Service, the Washington Star, the New York Herald Tribune, New York Times, Associated Press, UPA, United Press Association, Chicago Tribune, the Washington Times, the New York Times, the Times-Picayune, the Washington Post, New York Times. I'm just going down the list, okay? Chicago Tribune, Daily News, Baltimore Sun, Philadelphia Bulletin, Wall Street Journal, Hearst Newspapers, U.S. News and World Report. You recognize many of these names. Getting closer to today's members, St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Philadelphia Bulletin, Reuters, CBS, RKO, General Broadcasting, Los Angeles Times, CBS News, USA Today, Sheridan Broadcasting, CNN, Reuters, USA Today, Knight Ridder, C-SPAN, Let's see, anybody new? So those are some of the organizations that were represented at the presidential level of the White House Correspondents Association. If you get into what happened with the latest dinner, it was absolutely awful. There's a gal by the name, alleged comic, Michelle Wolf. She said some of the most awful, profane, outrageous, over-the-top, nasty things I've ever heard. Absolutely awful. And these are the organizations that are supposedly representing the best of the best. If you want to go to the White House and report on what's happening, you've got to have your act together. They allowed this person to Michelle Wolf, absolutely trash the organization, the White House Correspondents Organization. She was filthy, absolutely filthy. And so who do I blame for this? Well, she wants to be a shock jock, I guess, or shock comedian, and she was. And I blame the administration of the Correspondents Association for not vetting her. I blame them for not having a hook to take her right off the podium, right off. With the first line that was offensive, somebody should have walked up to her and said, "Hey, you're out of here. Michelle Wolf, you're out of here. What you've done is beyond the pale, over the top, outrageous, vile, vulgar." I don't want to say some of the things that she said, but they were just awful. And they call her a comedian. Absolutely awful. Rich, do you have any comments on this? This ugly person?
I do. First of all, the list that you mentioned basically is the mainstream media. In other words, they're bought and paid for the elite agenda. Mm-hmm. In other words, I use that term loosely, but I use it often, the word sanctioned. It's sanctioned information. Basically, they're told and paid and intimidated and threatened to say certain things and especially not say certain things. As far as Wolf goes, it's basically grooming America to be desensitized. When you, pretty soon, as the West turns into this multicultural, diverse region, pretty soon people just give up and they try to go about their day. A lot of people end up committing suicide. A lot of people go on drugs like opioids. A lot of people become obese. People just give up, stay at home, and play on their computers all day. As we all know, the average American spends 7 to 8 hours a day on their smartphone and television. That doesn't even include computers. So people are giving up, and that's why we do what we do. This is very relevant what I'm about to say, talking about Kevin Shipp, ex-CIA whistleblower. But he's not part of the mainstream media. And he made it very clear that the Clinton Foundation was covering up treason and bribes and crimes and money laundering, selling 20% of uranium to Russia, stole billions from Haiti. The DNC paid $12 million to former British intelligence officer Christopher Steele to gather information from second and third-party sources, which turned out to be Russian intelligence. And the FBI and CIA leaked information with John Brennan to get FISA warrants in order to spy on Trump and his cabinet. And Obama used fake information to get fake warrant to spy on Trump with the NSA. Now, how many people are going to give this information to the mainstream media? Zero. That's an absolute number. It's like never, okay? It's like always, but just the opposite. Never. And some of the things that he talked about, too, briefly, was that, and first of all, does this sound like it's for the people, by the people, and of the people, as I mentioned, what the average Joe spends on with their taxes, okay? And we're not even voting on this spending, by the way. $50 billion total intelligence agency budget, $598 billion for defense budget, $150 billion for cost of overseas military bases, $5.9 billion for military aid to foreign countries that hate us, $4 billion to congressional lobbyists. The cost to American security is defunding Social Security, defunding Medicare, defunding Medicaid, defunding health care, especially if you have pre-existing conditions. See, folks, it's just like it doesn't matter if it's big government or big corporate oligarchies. I give the example of GlaxoSmithKline, how they defrauded Medicare and Medicaid out of billions of dollars. This is fascism, people. There's an article on Zero Hedge right now, Vince. Dial T for tyranny while America fused. The police state shifts into high gear. And they cleverly went through each. They just picked one thing that's happening that the little people don't have control over. You know, for example, A is for the American police state, militarization, surveillance, widespread police presence. B is for the battered Bill of Rights. C is for civil asset forfeiture. And they really go through stuff. E is for electronic concentration camp, a.k.a. the surveillance state. Hollow point bullets, which was stockpiled by the Homeland Security and Social Security Administration. Hello? What about all the people who put into the kitty for the Social Security? It's going, hollow point bullets is going to these people to protect their asses when they don't, when they're stealing our money who put into the kitty. Jailing for profit for J. L is for license plate readers. I mean, O is for over-criminalization. Q, you talked about this earlier. It's for qualified immunity, which allows police officers to walk away without paying a dime for their wrongdoing. S is for surveillance state. T is for tasers. U is for unarmed citizens shot by the police. And as you know, America, I stick up for the police a lot, okay? Way more than I bash them. But the bottom line is the American people need to have say from the bottom up. The tyranny, the corruption, the manipulation, the deception, the nepotism from the top down is absolutely out of control. And the little people need to take over. And we need to do a reset, and we need to do everything that's going to benefit the people, the masses, and not just the elite. Vince?
Michelle Wolf had some tweets, and she called Eric Trump an abortion. Absolutely outrageous. I think we've sunk to a new low level. I just can't believe. I can't believe the words people are using. She used the F word at the correspondence dinner during her presentation, and people are clapping. The people, and looks like there were thousands in attendance, clapping at this dinner. So the American people didn't think too much of it. There was a poll, and I'm looking at it right now, and the question is, do you think Michelle Wolf's jokes at the correspondence dinner went too far? And there are two choices. One, yes, they were tasteless. No, they were funny. 21% of those voting said, no, they were funny. 79% said, yes, they were tasteless. And I'm in that 79%. They were absolutely outrageous. So what do you do when you've got someone who does that? Well, what I would do is I'd say, you were expecting to get paid for this? Not going to happen. We're not paying you. And by the way, you're never coming back. You're never coming back. And that's what I did to people who let down our guests at the Get Prepared Expo. When they let them down, Rich Sheben's with us. Rich, there's a charity. It's one of the largest children's charities in the world. And the founder of it, a guy named Peter John Dalglish, is the United Nations advisor and founder of Street Kids International. It's a charity. And he was arrested for pedophilia. And this is the kind of thing that we're hearing more and more about, that these organizations that we thought we could trust, we can't. And so this article in Blacklisted News says, our preliminary investigation has found that he has been targeting children from poor financial backgrounds and sexually abusing them by promising the family members that he would educate their children, take them abroad, and also provide them jobs after they finished their education, he had been sexually abusing children. Given his age and his high profile, in the humanitarian sector, he would easily win the trust of family members and later abuse their children. Outrageous, right? Another outrage.
Mm-hmm.
It's happening more and more and more. People, and like Bill Cosby, found guilty of drugging women to take sexual advantage of them while they've been drugged. They call him America's dad. Yeah, really? Bill Cosby is a national disgrace. He's been stripped of his honorary degrees. And that's great. It's great that he's been stripped of them. His all the images of Bill Cosby should, prior to being taken down, there should be a red circle with a diagonal stripe through them, for a couple of years, to let those who remember him having honorary degrees from the universities, let all those passersby realize that the university has taken a stand, that they don't have any more respect for him, and that they were wrong to trust him. Right? We have been let down. Judges involved in selling, what would you call it? They've let people off with lesser sentences if they perform sexual favors for the judge. Those kinds of things are happening. The police have been doing it. You and I have a difference of opinion on the police. I think that there's probably, I think that 99% of them give the rest a bad name. That's my take on the police.
Well,
I see.
Which of these do you want me to comment on? You mentioned quite a few things in the last few minutes, but if it's okay, I'd like to give it a shot.
I just want to say one more thing. I think it's an outrage when the cops hide with their radar guns in a parking lot, private property, right? They just find an empty parking space where they can on private property, and they've got their radar guns. And on a Sunday when the business isn't open, I'm talking about a small business, and they just aim their radar guns and they pick off passersby. I mean, what are they doing on private property? Who do they think they are? And being sneaky. So yeah, comment on any of that, please.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'll take what you're talking about last. As far as the cops goes, I think that's why we talk about ideas and solutions. A lot of people talk negative stuff or what people perceive as doom porn, but I try very hard to create ideas and solutions for the benefit of the people. In other words, the bottom 93% of income earners who have no rights, no restitution, and no protection under the law. So if we would invoke the 10th Amendment and don't allow Fed training, no military weapons for the state police, establish a citizen review board which will have authority over police brutality, and police wearing cameras, that would be a good start to correcting the illegalities that occur. Vince?
Yeah, my only concern about the police wearing cameras, I've got mixed reactions about that. One is they've got facial recognition software. Okay, if it were to protect us from the cops, I'm all for it. If that's all they used it for, and if they didn't turn them off,
I agree.
We could hear their conversations and audio in the car. Everyone all set? Cocked, locked, hour number 2 of the USA Polaris. Rich Scheben's with us, offgridmontana.com, offgridmontana.com. His book, One New York Man's Journey to Off-Grid Living in Montana. It's available at Amazon. Rich Scheben, inflation warning lights, according to Zero Hedge, are flashing as manufacturing prices soar the most since 2011. No question in my mind, I'm seeing it. Let me give you an example. So we're working on this little riding lawnmower to help one of our neighbors. And this silly thing, and by the way, I think the Poulin Pro 42-inch riding lawnmower is the most dangerous lawnmower I have ever seen. Absolutely. The mower blades on the right-hand side of the mower are covered by a little plastic grass diverter. And if you lift it up, the mower blades are right below this plastic cover. So it doesn't like just keep your feet a little bit away. It is the cover for the mower blades. It is really, really dangerous. And if any product should be removed from the public, I believe this is one that we should start with. It is, in my opinion, it's just my opinion, it is extremely dangerous. So if you're looking for a lawnmower class, lift up the plastic chute, diverter, at the end of the side of the mower where the grass comes out. Lift it up and see what's under there. And if you think that your foot would be cut off, if anything happened, that little flimsy plastic cover, don't buy that mower. And Poulin products, I think, are among the cheesiest, worst constructed, fastest to fail, wear out and break that I've ever seen. I'm talking about their chainsaws. I'm talking about all the products they make, I think, are substandard. That's my opinion. And I hope their lawyers give me a call because I'll put them on the air and we'll talk about it. So, inflation. An oil filter for this mower that has a Briggs & Stratton engine is $15. $15. Now, you can go to Walmart and buy an automotive filter that is about the same construction. I'm talking about the same amount of materials, the same size shell, the same size base plate, the same size gasket, the same size anti-drain back valve, same size filter media for $4. What's happening in America is people are being held hostage because of lack of knowledge. So what we do is we cross-reference and cross-reference and cross-reference until we find an automotive filter that will fit the application. And we found one. So instead of a $15 Briggs & Stratton filter, we found a Wix, W-I-X brand for $8. And you can do the same thing. So just about half price. But what I'm saying is these are the things that you need to do, in my opinion, to avoid this spiraling inflation trap. $15 for a lawnmower oil filter is crazy, in my opinion. Just my thoughts on just one little tiny thing that I'm seeing as inflationary. Now, we can talk about lots of things with disposable products. Now, I would consider a Poulin brand air-cooled engine machine, whether it be a lawnmower or a chainsaw, as a disposable product, temporary product. However, when you go to buy one, you don't say, y'all have any temporary lawnmowers? I'm thinking about a chainsaw. Now, I only need it for the weekend. You got one that'll just last, through Sunday afternoon? Nobody does that. When you buy a chainsaw, you think you're buying something that's going to last 20 years. It's implied. But with some products, that's not the case. It's absolutely not the case. So our neighbor's Poulin mower is right on our pad, right next to our garage. And, my son seems like he's the go-to guy in our neck of the woods for fixing things. What happened with this Poulin riding mower is it has this poorly designed drain valve. So if you want to drain the oil on this thing, all you do is you take this little plastic tube that's a couple inches long, you push it in, and you turn it 90 degrees, and oil will come out the end of this tube. Well, what happened is it's so poorly designed that it broke while the owner was riding it, and oil's draining out of the engine. It's poorly designed. If you think I'm kidding, just go to eBay and type in Poulin drain plug, and you'll see they've got plenty of them for sale. Why? Because they break. Now, when an oil drain plug breaks and you lose the engine lubrication, the engine will seize up. Or, best case is you'll have accelerated wear because of the lack of oil, and you go, oh, holy smoke, something's going wrong. I see oil on my foot. I think something's wrong. I better stop. Rich, I think you would call this planned obsolescence. Is that right?
Actually, with the ferocity that this has happened, I'd cross out the word planned and replace it with the word forced obsolescence. Now, what we have...
yeah, you're right.
Yeah. What we have, and you mentioned inflation, and prices are inflationary in a lot of areas. There's no doubt about it. A lot's because of, subsidies, money printing, special interest, lobbyist PACs. to feather the nest of the big corporate oligarchies and protect big government. But what we have in America is what I call a hybrid stagflation. It's the worst of inflation and the worst of deflation, especially for the bottom 93% of Americans. See, with all the debt that we have, savings going down, et cetera, we have to remember 70% of our GDP is measured through consumption. So if we buy things with cash, we leave no debt, it could lead to a demand trend in inflation for the short term. But what's happening is people are buying things on time. They're paying interest. They're going into their homes, and like I mentioned a month or two ago, Americans are tapping, Canadians are tapping into their ATM machines, which is now their home, basically taking out second and third mortgages. And so when we buy on time and pay interest, which is increasing our debt loads at every level, from consumer to corporate to government, this leads to a trend of debt deflation, and people can't buy other goods and services, and that's why the numbers are rapidly descending and the middle class is broke. And this isn't really against Trump because, as I mentioned, from the first day he was elected, he inherited economic sabotage and demolition. We have now an incognito caste system that the status quo has always wanted. And you look at demographics, our credit collapsing, debt loads, pensions, which are all in the red, valuations, which are all absolutely phony. I mean, every word has been literally changed to benefit the system that's totally fraudulent. I don't even know what markets and fundamentals mean anymore. Do you know what fair value means? I mean, the PE ratio is probably over 30 on average. There's companies out there like the FANGs in the hundreds, if not 200s. What does leverage and liquidity mean anymore? What does solvency, inflation or deflation mean? GDP. How can we keep using GDP when it takes, depending on which author you believe, $4 to $6 of new debt to create $1 of growth? Core businesses are leaving all corporations. Free markets, supply and demand is almost gone. Velocity of money is literally dropping like a rock. Instead of corporations putting money into the people, into investing into employees, into R&D, into goods and services, they're putting it into stock buybacks and feathering the nest of the executives through stock options. And then when they do mergers and acquisitions, it's more consolidation, more firing, and more implementing the new industry, which is robotics, automation, and basically everything that eliminates jobs for middle America. So the wealthy people are getting that way, not through supply and demand and free markets, but they're using the opportunity that the state and the fascist system gives them, not to serve their customers or the people of the free market, but to feather their own nest. Now, Vince, sometimes we get people come out and they say, oh, you guys are just a conservative radio station. I don't even like labels. What I'm trying to do is stick up for the little guy, and that is the poor / middle class, the bottom 93% that has no protection under the law. But you got to ask yourself, if you vote for the so-called progressive left, Democrats, liberals, they're not liberal anymore. All their money comes from the UN, the George Soroses, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds. You got to ask yourself, is it liberal to call people Nazis, sexual, violent, rapists, and eliminating the right to think, speak, and communicate? You mentioned Bill Cosby before. I was going to comment on that. Basically, this is why we're for the words adult mutual consensual sex. You also mentioned pedophilia, because it's definitely not liberal to normalize pedophilia, even though the New York Times are on record defending NAMBLA. I think that stands for the North American Man-Boy Love Association. And you got to ask yourself, look at all these things that's going on. Is it liberal to censor books and words? Is it liberal to vote for someone to be a grown man, identify as a young girl, and sexually molest other girls? Is it liberal for the DOJ, the Democrat/globalist party, to funnel money to liberal groups and exclude conservative ones? Is it liberal to have science bought and paid for, and gag orders from NOAA, to global warming, to geoengineering? Is it liberal to have 96% of Monsanto shareholders vote to non-disclose GMO ingredients? Folks, Get rid of the left-right paradigm. It's the aristocracy managing the serfs. Vince?
Hold that thought. We'll be right back. Rich talked about forced obsolescence. I think he's absolutely right with that word. Well, here's a little bit about Poulin. So Poulin is the brand name of the Swedish manufacturer Husqvarna. Okay, Husqvarna is the orange type colored product, like you'll see their lawnmowers are orange, their chainsaws are orange, their leaf blowers are orange, and so forth. And that's considered a pretty good product. So Poulin is the brand name of the Swedish manufacturer Husqvarna, once a component of the Swedish conglomerate Electrolux. So in 2006, Electrolux spun off Husqvarna into its own company, and Poulin is below Husqvarna. Now, Poulin originally was an independent American company in Louisiana, founded as the Poulin Saw Company in 1912. And they had pretty good products, but they were acquired many times since then. They were acquired by a company called the Beard Company in Shreveport, also known as Beard Poulin. Then they were acquired by Emerson Electric in 1972, and then they were purchased by Electrolux in 1984. The products became worse and worse and worse and worse as these newer companies took them over. And I think each time that happens, when a new company buys an older company, two things happen. Quality goes down, and the price, and people get fired. That's what happens. So Poulin is known for its outdoor power equipment, such as chainsaws and lawnmowers and leaf blowers, and they call it. It's aimed at what's considered mid-level consumers, which really to me means disposable. Mid-level consumers, and they sell their lawnmowers to Sears, and they're sold under the Sears Craftsman brand name. They're just slightly altered Poulin products. My opinion, substandard. So here we have Sears, who has lost the confidence of their customers, who has decided that good, better, best is no longer applicable, and they can sell products that are substandard, and people will buy them because they're painted nicely. And they'll trade on the old name Craftsman, so people will say, well, it's a Craftsman, that's a good one, that's a good unit. It's a good tool, it's a good whatever, because it's Craftsman. But that's no longer the case, in my opinion. So, as far as Poulin goes, I would not buy a Poulin product. That's my opinion. I will not buy a Poulin product. I'm not telling our class what to do, but I'm not buying one. And here's the thing that really frosts me. Electrolux, if you had an Electrolux vacuum cleaner in the 1960s, 1970s, that was top of the line. Electrolux was equivalent to Cadillac, in the term. That's a Cadillac. Well, meaning best in its class. Well, that's what Electrolux was. But not anymore. Not anymore, because if you look at the back of this Poulin riding mower, it says for parts, call Electrolux. So they're trading on Electrolux being a great company, and this is a cheesy, unsafe, in my opinion, riding lawnmower. I'm talking about what's called the Poulin Pro 42-inch. Take a look. Next time you're at one of those big box stores like Sears or anybody else that sells them, just lift up that lawn chute right on the mower and look at that and see if you think your foot would get cut off. Rich, we have taken quality products, quality brand names, and destroyed them in this country through greed for more money in compensation for the upper cut of the corporations. Greater CEO salaries. CEO salaries are at record numbers in terms of multipliers. Does the CEO of Disney deserve $81 million a year when the guy who's wearing the Goofy costume or the Mickey Mouse costume get minimum wage? Is that reasonable? Not in my world. Not in my world. That guy puts on his pants the same way that the guy who puts on the Goofy costume does. CEO doesn't deserve $81 million a year. Just my thoughts. Rich, I'd love to hear your comments and opinions on that when we come back. Do you think it's as outrageous as I do? I'll bet you do. Rich Scheben's with us. So I was looking at Disney's CEO, Bob Iger, could earn up to $423 million in compensation. $423 million. Now, they had a shareholder vote. 52% of the shareholders opposed Iger's compensation and that of other executives in a non-binding advisory vote. Now think about this, class. You've got a vote about compensation. The shareholders who actually own the company vote 52%. Majority say no. No, this is way too much. But the vote was really not binding. It was just an advisory. So if you think your vote counts, it doesn't count in this case. And I think it doesn't count in lots of cases. Is the CEO of Disney worth $500 million? Think about that. $500 million. He makes more in a second than most of the employees there make in a year. Well, maybe 10 seconds. Margaret, welcome. You're on USA Prepares.
Hello. Thank you for taking my call. And
Sure.
I'm not going to talk about economics, but I do have something that's bothering me.
Just one thing?
May I say
Just
it?
one thing that's bothering you? Like, almost everything's bothering me.
I just heard about the two stars colliding, and whenever they go off, it'll be the end of the earth, but we don't know when that'll happen. So, I mean, there's problems everywhere. But let me tell you this. A friend of mine, I'm in Spain, and a friend of mine called me this morning because it's a national holiday, May 1st. And I thought it was something about flowers or the Virgin Mary or something. And, he goes, this is the day where all of the world is celebrating with demonstrations something that happened in the United States in the late 1800s. That has to do with Labor Day. So I always thought Labor Day was in September, right? And I didn't know why, and I've never really been a history student, never was when I was in school. So anyway, now I'm tuning in, and they say, so I just went ahead and looked it up on a server. And I wonder if you know what happened May 1st in something like 1884 in Chicago, and why the rest of the world celebrates International Labor Day on May 1st, and the United States celebrates it in September.
Are you talking about strikes in Ohio in 1886? Is that what you're talking about?
Chicago, Illinois. I believe it was 1884. There were strikes, but what happened and who was striking and why? And why?
Well, why don't you share that with us?
Okay.
Sure,
well, I just, quickly read, and of course we all get a little nervous on the phone, so let me just, and I'm upset about this because once again I have had my whole world view changed. Okay. Just having a cup of coffee. Because I thought I knew what Labor Day was and when it was and all of that. And now I found out today the rest of the world is celebrating what they have voted on to be International Labor Day, May 1st, because of some strikes and riots that occurred in Chicago. It was about union formation, and the outcome of it was, and in fact, many people were killed on the 1st, and then I think on the 4th, there were more demonstrations, and I believe they publicly hung 4 of the demonstrators. What was the outcome? The outcome was they were fighting for a 40-hour work week. So that's why the rest of the world today is celebrating what happened in our country that gave the rest of the world the hope and opportunity to have a 40-hour work week. And so I don't know if I've explained it well, but it's once again I have to reframe my history, what happened and why. Why is the United States so looked up to and then sometimes so despised? But what about American history for Americans? So I don't know. You have to leave the country to get information.
Margaret, have you heard of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory Fire in New York City?
I believe so, yes. I couldn't tell you the year.
Okay. Okay, in 1911, so it was a little bit after what you're talking about. In 1911, there was the deadliest industrial disaster in the history of the city up to that point. And what happened is 146 garment workers were killed. 123 were women, 23 were men. They died from fire, smoke inhalation, and falling or jumping to their deaths. And these were Italian and Jewish immigrant women aged 14 to 23. And what happened is they were working in this shirtwaist factory, tall building, and there was a fire that broke out. And the exits were chained so they couldn't get out. These people died.
That was 1911?
And so, 1911, March 25th.
Okay.
And that led to the same kind of thing you're talking about. Safety standards were implemented, and that spurred the growth of the International Ladies Garment Workers Union, ILGWU, which fought for better conditions. So what you're talking about was the International Workers' Day. It's known as Labor Day or the Workers' Day in some countries, often referred to as May Day.
Correct.
And it's a celebration of laborers and the working classes and what they've done, and to build products for the rest of us, and to improve safety and conditions, to
give a decent
obliterate
working life, 40 hours. But let me just do this one more time, Vincent. May 1st, it's celebrated internationally on today because that is the celebration of this outburst and demonstration and deaths in Chicago. Now, how many of the United States people even know that happened, and why, my question again, is the United States the only country that celebrates it in September rather than May 1st? And now, after what you said, too, I'm like, look how much we have to fight, and people have to die for rights.
There's one of our instructors, his name is Pat Shannon.
Yeah.
And he wrote a book, and I believe the title is Everything They Ever Told Me Was a Lie.
Yeah, I know. I'm living it. I'm sorry for interrupting, but that's why I called. It's like...
And history is rewritten by the victors, right? History is rewritten by the victors. And what we're doing with our children in school is we're trading books, physical books with pages and bindings and covers, for electronic media. And I believe that electronic media is easy to edit. So, for example, if you want to change some of what we're told happened in history, you change it in one or two places, and these software companies that produce the electronic training materials to replace teachers in the classroom, you can change history very quickly. And
absolutely.
What we've done to prove that we have removed teachers from the classroom and replaced them with hall monitors or classroom monitors or teachers' aides or whatever you want to call these people who just kind of try to keep order in the classroom and tell the children to sit down and work on their lessons at the computer screen. If you want proof that we have removed teachers from classrooms, look at the trades. We used to teach home economics. How many schools now teach home economics? Maybe that's sexist, because mostly young women would be involved in learning how to run the household. Now, I don't think that's sexist at all. I think it's the most important function, that and raising the children and being there for the family. One of the most important thing a woman can do, in my opinion. What's more important than raising your children? What's more important than keeping a safe, sanitary, wonderful experience at home? What's more important than that? And so we've removed home economics from most schools. We've removed learning about electricity, building trades like the electrical trades, plumbing trades, mechanical trades.
All the things that would have been, students could have gone that route with the more technical classes, or even the universities or the colleges and the technical colleges that were instituted. I'm remembering now as a junior in high school, I could have either taken home economics or physics. And although I didn't understand anything about math or physics, I chose physics. But let me just say, you're breaking my heart, going over the condition of things as they are. I have been a teacher all my life. My mother was a fabulous teacher. My sister, by the way, has 9 children, and she homeschooled all of them. And they are, getting married. They know how to socialize. They're marrying doctors, and they're playing pro ball and this and that and the other. So I just don't see any way out of what we've done, Vincent. I don't think it'll be corrected in my lifetime. I think it's a terrible tragedy.
When you say what we've done, you're talking about the baby boomers, what we've done to our children?
Well, I'm a baby boomer, and I didn't do it.
Well, I don't mean, when I say we, I don't mean you, me, and anyone in our class. I mean people of our generation have done so much damage in the pursuit of greed and profit.
Irreparable. You're going to go. I'm going to go.
Do you want to hold to the break?
I'll hold. Go ahead.
Okay. We'll be right back. Rich Sheben's with us.
Okay.
Rich Sheben's with us, offgridmontana.com. Margaret in the country of Spain is with us on the telephone. And a couple of very short comments. First comment is all of our children have been homeschooled. And our daughter began college at 19 and graduated with her master's in business administration she started at college at 14 and graduated with her MBA at 19. That's one comment. So homeschooling works. Second comment is there's a national holiday in the United States, and it is the day that we commemorate the adoption of the Declaration of Independence. And that is July 4th, 1776. Many of us of the baby boomer generation remember it as Independence Day. However, it is now being referred to as the 4th of July. And 4th of July means fireworks, hot dogs, hamburgers, barbecues, and a day off from work. So things have changed. We used to call them children. Now the media refers to them as kids. Now a kid is baby goat. So I am dragging my feet. I do not want to change. To me, it's Independence Day. They're children, and homeschooling is great. Margaret, any other comments before Rich weighs in?
No. I just was trying to think of the solutions, but right now...
few and far between.
The problems are gigantic and very complicated. And I just want to tell Rich, you said it's Rich, I thought it was Rick, Mr. Scheben, that I really appreciate his contributions. He's way high up there at the top of the list.
He's fabulous.
Thank you, Margaret. I really appreciate that.
Rich, your thoughts?
Well, I can comment on a lot of things, but you asked me about half an hour ago to comment on what you call was an outrage regarding the oligarchies and the people on top getting these multi-million-dollar salaries. But when you look at all the bailouts, the corporate welfare, the banks, Wall Street, insurance companies, auto manufacturing, all these people who have gotten bailed out by the bottom 93% of Americans, they still kept their bonuses, they still kept their high salaries, they still kept their benefits on us. And it's very disturbing when they say they lump all these so-called entitlements like Social Security into the same bucket. When people put into the kitty, that's what Social Security is. You put into the kitty and you take out of the kitty. So there's a lot of government welfare. There's a lot of corporate welfare. You just look at QE, quantitative easing, and I've said this over the air many times. 95% of that money goes to the top 1 to 7%. Let me say that again. 95% of quantitative easing goes to the top 1 to 7%. So the elite are picking the winners and losers, and what it is a divide and conquer strategy. And this divide and conquer strategy has absolutely destroyed America by rewarding mediocrity and pitting people from different groups against each other. And this is one, and it doesn't matter what group, it could be race, gender, sex, sexual orientation, ideology, religion, generation. This is why there's so much race baiting and gender baiting and generation baiting. You know, we have to, this is why we're called the new media. This is why we're called the alternative media, because the mainstream media, as I mentioned, almost every show is bought and paid for. Their job is solely to sway public opinion and hold on to the narrative, the memes, the talking points, the themes, the microphones, and their job is to manufacture perception, pity, guilt, and ideology. And what's happened is we ended up, the consequences for a divide and conquer strategy has been lowering the bars of standards and expectations, which has destroyed America from within. You can't reward mediocrity generation after generation, make the United States turn into the divided groups of America with the law of diminishing returns being its motto, and expect opportunity, knowledge, ingenuity, productivity, and innovation to be available for the little people. Again, the little people is the bottom 93% of Americans. So this is why this needs redundancy, and we got to stick up for the little guy.
Yeah. Margaret, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you. Goodbye to all of the little people, and best wishes. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret.
So that was Margaret in Spain, and it's great to hear from her. And she certainly likes Rich Scheben, and so do I. Rich, I want to thank you for all of your hard work and contributions, and even the side conversations we have off the air to prepare for the broadcast and what we're going to talk about.
Always my pleasure.